Hey everyone, it's Tom here with a look at F1 2017, and to join me today is Richard Ledbetter.
Hello, how you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. This is one of the games that's kind of been on the periphery of our vision as we've been going through the Xbox One X enhanced titles. We didn't get around to doing the PlayStation 4 Pro analysis properly with this one, so for the first time we get to see both, with their enhancements in graphics and frame rates, and the push for 4K obviously is at the forefront of that. But more on that in a second. So what you're seeing here is a high dynamic range capture of both, and I believe there's a bunch of compatible devices as well for that.
Yeah, so basically if you're watching on a TV, if you have a Roku enabled 4K UHD TV, this should be able to run in HDR. Also, the app on Samsung 2016 and 2017 devices should work just fine, and there's even smartphone compatibility, so Galaxy S8, S8 Plus, Note 8, LG V30, and I think the Sony Xperia XZ Platinum. All of these devices will play back this video in full HDR. And of course, if you support the Digital Foundry Patreon, head on over to digitalfoundry.net, grab the video there, stick it on a USB stick, watch it on your TV, and you are good to go.
But I suppose in terms of the raw tech behind that, we're looking at an evolution of the Ego engine, an engine that's been pushed by Codemasters to push physics-based interactions between all these cars. I suppose that's the main thrust of what this game's going for. You know, you'd expect physics and lots of cars to be a culprit for frame rate drops, which we'll cover later on in this video.
Okay, so let's talk about resolution here, because obviously the Pro version has been out for a while, was confirmed 4K checkerboard at launch. Xbox One X, now we saw this at Gamescom and it looked exceptionally clean. It looked to us like native resolution, but what's the score there?
Image quality is pretty much on par with PS4 Pro. There's all these telltale artifacts across the image in motion, which suggests that it's using checkerboarding in the same fashion as PS4 Pro, and you see those sort of stippling edges, especially if you turn off the motion blur effect, which is actually possible in the options here. So yes, from that you can deduce it is a checkerboarding image on Xbox One X, which is a little bit of a surprise.
Because obviously we've seen quite a few games out there, Destiny 2 for example, Rise of the Tomb Raider, which have resolved checkerboard 4K presentations on the Pro, but have opted for native resolution rendering on the Xbox One X. And here, Codemasters have chosen to retain checkerboarding for Xbox One X. And it's also surprising because obviously the Pro has dedicated hardware for checkerboarding, whereas the Xbox One X doesn't have those same facilities. So yeah, they have gone for the same solution here, which definitely surprised me. In fact, you know, it really is essentially like for like, with just a few minor changes here and there, right?
That's right. There's about two main graphical differences underneath the resolution. You probably spotted it already. There's a difference in shadow quality. Now, we've been debating in offers about which one's better or worse, but the gist is, on Xbox One X you're getting softer, more diffused shadows behind the car and across the world, whereas PS4 Pro has the sharper, more stencil-like outlines. If you look close under the wheel, it can look a bit pixelated, but from afar it does look a little bit more nicer on the eye. So really, I'll leave that up for debate, but there is definitely a difference in setting there.
Yeah, I think the fact there is a difference there in the visual quality, when at the end of the day the Pro and the X are based on very similar hardware, quite surprising in my book. But that isn't the only difference, but we're kind of scraping the barrel with the second one, aren't we?
Yeah, it's clutching at straws, but on PS4 Pro you do have better LODs. You can see this in the rear view mirror. As you make this turn, you can actually see more trees being rendered in the background. Are you ever going to notice it? Probably not, but it is there, and it is there consistently, which to me suggests that maybe they've left something unchecked on Xbox One X. They could very likely have achieved it on Xbox One X given the parity and resolution, but it's a Pro advantage, no doubt.
So when you talk about LODs, it is literally just the wing mirrors we're talking about here, nothing in the main view.
Yeah, pretty much, and that's a weird distinction to make, isn't it? Yeah, it is just this small detail if you're willing to look there.
Okay, so I was looking at the PlayStation 4 blog here where they were talking about the enhancements made to the Pro version. They're talking about enhanced shadow precisions, improved environment reflections, and they're also talking about improved trackside shaders. But it looks like the vast majority of this work has transferred over to the Xbox One X as well.
So definitely splitting hairs on this one, and the real difference, I'd say, is in the performance side. Okay, so right where we've got an adaptive VSync with a 60 FPS target on both machines, but clearly there's one victor here.
The Xbox One X is doing a much better job of holding 60 frames per second, and there's a lot of intrusive screen tearing on the PlayStation 4 Pro side, which does compromise the integrity of the presentation, and by and large it's kind of gone on Xbox One X, but obviously not completely, because we are getting these occasional bouts of tearing.
If these drops to 55 FPS, let's say, that's about the ballpark drop that you get compared to a 60 on the Xbox One X. The frame rate drop isn't quite as much of a nuisance as the tearing. You know, if you go through these tracks, having the whole screen tear in half, it's an eyesore sometimes. You know, it's suggestible you could drop the resolution and maybe get better results. But then again, we're seeing a lot of cars on screen, which might suggest it is a CPU related issue, in which case there's not much you can really do.
Yeah, aside from optimize the game, you know, more thoroughly to get a better consistent lock on 60 frames per second. If we talk about Turn 10's workflow here, everything is designed from the ground up to fit within a specific budget, both CPU and GPU, and that's how they get their complete lock on 60 frames per second. But you can see here that obviously the enhanced horsepower of the Xbox One X is offering a significant uptick in terms of overall frame rates and overall lock to 60 frames per second and fewer bouts of screen tearing, but at the same time the fact that we're seeing it at all, kind of surprising.
It is, and I do think Codemasters has judged the optimization of the Xbox One X side better overall. I'd rather play what we're getting on Xbox One X, even though it's, you know, not pushing any higher resolutions. It is getting a better frame rate, and that is pretty much crucial to a racing game.
Yeah, but at the same time we're talking about, you know, an extra 42% of compute power, masses more memory bandwidth, and obviously an extra 200 megahertz on the CPU, so obviously that is the weak link there. But essentially what are we getting here? An extra 5 to maximum 10 frames per second and less screen tearing. It's not exactly in line with some of the other third-party Xbox One X patches we've seen. I mean, you know, we've seen anything up to a 2.25x increase in resolution on some titles, games that do really push the AMD hardware. So obviously I think the Xbox One X version offers the more consistent experience overall, but I can't help thinking that we should have got a little more here.
But at the very least, F1 2017 is getting some benefits on both hardware, and you know, it's not a perfect turnout, but you are getting something for your money when you're paying for this extra hardware. So I guess that wraps it up. Thanks for joining me, Rich.
No problem.
Of course, this is presented in HDR, so we'll have the HEVC file uploaded to our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net if you want to see the original source file, so feel free to check that out. But otherwise, if you're watching this on YouTube, feel free to like and subscribe to support what we do at Digital Foundry. Until next time though, thanks for watching.